Welcome back, everyone. We got the Japanese Grand Prix that's upon us, and Red Bull has decided to kick off the Japanese Grand Prix weekend with a stunning car reveal. This livery is absolutely insane, and I have to give credit where credit is due, and credit is definitely due because this Red Bull design has taken the cake. There is no doubt that this is a supreme design. This is a miraculous, beautiful design. It is pearly white with cherry, glossy cherry, deep cherry red with a lot of black carbon fiber. They aced it. Whoever's idea it was to do this car, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness, they're getting a bonus. They're getting a pay raise ASAP. I don't know about the outfits though. I don't know about these outfits. But we don't care. We got Yuki there. Hopefully Yuki can drive that bloody car. Hopefully. Because we know that they build that car mostly to allow Max to go faster, not the other way around. So we just hope that Yuki can actually, adapt to that car in decent fashion. But bravo. Bravo. I mean, damn. This is a cold one. I'm not gonna lie. This is a frosty one, ladies and gents. This is a frosty one. I'm in love with this design. You see, from this angle, it is just damn, they killed it. If they win this weekend, the whole paddock is gonna melt down. I'm not lying. Like, I think everyone loves this livery. I don't know how long they've been waiting to bring out this livery, but goddamn, just keep it for the rest of the season, please. I'm not gonna lie, this is a hot one. This is a hot one. This is a real good one. I can't believe it's only a one-time livery. This is a real good one. It's so refreshing to get something different compared to the standard Red Bull dark blue. But bravo to everyone at Red Bull who was involved in that car's livery. Fantastic job. Here is something that we definitely want to touch on. I wanted to make this video for quite some time. We're going to make it now. And this was mostly taken after the Chinese GP where, it was fairly, obvious to say Ferrari didn't perform well. Come on now, they both got disqualified after the final race. I mean, Lewis did win the sprint race, so that's a really high point. But something happened during those sessions, and Ferrari tried something different with both cars, and as a result, it just didn't work out. Now, Jeremy Clarkson responded to Lewis Hamilton disqualification after past his prime claims. So there's some claims out there about Lewis passing his prime. I don't understand the criticism towards Lewis. It is not like Charles is winning and Lewis is, finishing fifth and sixth. They're literally neck and neck. They're actually reasonably close to each other when finishing, but people will just find anything to go at Lewis. And that's why we build this channel, to clarify this nonsense. Celebrity F1 fan Jeremy Clarkson said it makes no sense that Ferrari driver Lewis Hamilton went from hero to zero over the course of Chinese Grand Prix weekend. Hamilton claimed his first win in Ferrari colors in Shanghai, converting pole position into victory on Saturday's sprint race. Only his third win of any kind since the start of the 2022 season. Jeremy Clarkson puzzled by Lewis Hamilton's hero to zero Chinese GP. However, the 7-time world champion's weekend took a turn for the worse from that point, as he and Charles Leclerc could only manage 5th and 6th respectively in qualifying for the main race. The pair went on to collide at the first corner, with Leclerc proving faster than his teammate despite damage to his front wing, prompting Hamilton to advise Ferrari to swap positions over the radio. At least they got it right. At least they're reporting that it was Hamilton who suggested that they swap drivers, swap roles, because Lewis knew that he just wasn't performing as usual. So he said, "Listen, at this point, I'm just holding up Charles. Let's let Charles go in front." Now, Leclerc and Hamilton ultimately finished 5th and 6th respectively on the road, but were later disqualified from the official classifications for separate offenses. While Leclerc's car was found to be underweight, Hamilton SF25 suffered excessive skid block rear. It marks the second time in the last 18 months that Hamilton has been disqualified for excessive rear to his skid blocks, having suffered the same fate at 2023 United States Grand Prix. Writing in this column for the Sun newspaper, Clarkson questioned how it was possible for Ferrari to go from quick to useless on the same week. Clarkson said it's important to everyone in Formula One that Ferrari does well because all the other teams are business, and Ferrari is more than that. It's the heart, it's the soul. It was crucial then that the team's new boy, I don't like how that sounds. I don't like how that sounds. First of all, he's a man, 40 years old man, grown ass man. Some call him an old man, yet still got the quickest reaction time on the grid. Still got the fastest pace out of anyone on the grid over a race distance. Don't call my goat a boy. We ain't no little boy. We're not 18 years old. We're not 19 years old. We're not 20. Nah, the man is 40. Put some respect on my goat's name. Apparently came out of the traps like he's been fired from a gun. And how good it would be that if it happened in China in front of the crowd that thinks he's a god. Well, I won't lie. They do love Lewis over there. I ain't gonna lie. And blows me down, did it. Clarkson went on to say for the sprint race in Shanghai last weekend, the elder statesman took pole position and then cruised away from the pack to win the race as well. What's interesting and troubling is that a few hours later, having created headlines around the world, Lewis could only qualify main event in fifth. Well, he did out-qualify Charles Leclerc, didn't he? He qualified Charles Leclerc in the sprint and in the actual qualifying for the race on Sunday. But you don't hear them writing about that. You don't hear them talking about that. You know what I mean? You do not. And even in Australia, when, Charles out-qualified Lewis, the margins were bloody close. It wasn't like it was 5/10, 6/10, 4/10, even 3/10. It was more like 2/10, or just a little bit less than 2/10. So, compared to his teammate, I actually think Lewis is doing fantastic. But, they're not going to write about that. But we are going to talk about it right here on this channel. So you can subscribe and make sure of that. Clarkson went on to say, and in the race itself, he was so slow he let his teammate overtake, and then he was disqualified. How is that possible? I can understand that a car might be quick at one track and the following weekend at a different track be useless. But to go from hero to zero at the same track on the same day makes no sense. That's true. It is very, very puzzling. Clarkson's latest comments come just months after he questions Hamilton's motivations behind his lucrative switch to Ferrari, accusing the seven-time world champion of being more of a superstar than a racing driver at his stage in his career. So he's the most successful racing driver of all time, and you're accusing him of what, being a superstar? Damn, this sport, it's got two standards. Is one, how they treat black drivers and brown drivers. There's any driver with a darker pigmentation. And then there's the next one, how they treat drivers who are seen as, suitable for Formula One, who fits into Formula One, what a Formula One driver is supposed to look like. First, it starts with, you got to be white. I know that's definitely on the criteria of, they've never want to give Lewis his credit. He is a real racing driver. He is the best racing driver. He's the greatest racing driver. And they can't even admit that he's a professional racing driver. They're always going to be like, oh, but he's off doing superstar stuff. So let me get this right. The guy is beloved by people around the world, including other celebrities that he's made fantastic connections with. He has great relations with multiple business people. He's a great ambassador for the sport. He's the one who's promoting the sport at all of these events. I don't see any other Formula One driver that's doing that. Yet it is not appreciated in this sport. I imagine if Max was doing that. Oh my goodness. Imagine if Max was the one who was doing the superstar stuff, creating a production company, wanting to be in movies with Tom Cruise, going to Hollywood, promoting the sport. Anywhere he goes, he promotes the sport. If he goes to fashion world, he promotes the sport. If he goes to the movie world, he promotes the sport. Imagine if Max Verstappen was doing that. Oh my God, they would be kissing his ass from here to Holland. And you know it. So when I say that in order to fit the criteria of what they think a Formula One driver, is and what they are, a big part of that comes down to his skin color. You got to be white. If you're not white, they think that it's just, it's not good enough. I will admit, it is a rare sight. You don't get a lot of successful black Formula One drivers. Lewis is the only one. In fact, you don't get a lot of black folks going into racing as a career, and but for the most part, that is not uncommon. It is not uncommon for racing drivers to mostly come from wealthy nations. Where are wealthy nations? Mostly in the West and North. While in the global South, you tend to get a little bit less. You will get the odd billionaire son from, India. You'll get that. The rich kid, you'll get the odd rich kids from these, countries that are not seen as, first world countries, but they're, it's got enough where some parents are overwhelmingly rich in an overwhelmingly poor country, and they afford their kids a career in racing. But some of them never make it far. Real talent like the one that Lewis has gotten him far. Thankfully, he was raised in the UK. And that was a massive help. Imagine if, Lewis was raised in Guyana, where his father, I believe that's where Lewis people are from, Guyana, and then the people who are from Guyana are originally from Africa, of course. Imagine if Lewis was raised in either the Caribbean or in Africa. Do you know how much harder, how much more difficult it would be to get into this sport? Even Senna. Look at guys like Senna. Look at guys like Felipe. They had massive financial support from families and etc. So when your family is not well off, if it's just not easy. Checo Perez's father is a multimillionaire, could help his son get into Formula One racing. So when you look at drivers who come from the South, Mexico, Brazil, Argentina. It's a lot of rich background. While if you're in Europe, you don't necessarily have to be rich. Being rich does help, but you don't necessarily have to be rich. Lewis was never rich. He wasn't financially rich, but he was damn rich in talent. The man was rich in talent. And at a young age, he had the guts to walk up to Ron Dennis and say, "Listen, I want to race for McLaren Formula One team in the future." And Ron Dennis, being the wise old man that he was at the time, and that probably wasn't the first time Ron Dennis have heard about young Lewis Hamilton. From there, he decided to keep an eye on young Lewis Hamilton. And Ron Dennis is really who helped Lewis Hamilton to get, help from McLaren. Without Ron Dennis in the picture, Lewis Hamilton would not have been aided in the way he did. So you can see geography does play a role, connections does play a role, but that's also just luck. We're lucky that Ron Dennis is the kind of man that I must say has never given me any vibe that he's got any racial bias. And I'm thankful because he could look at a young black kid and basically say, "You got the talent, let's sign you." At that time in Britain in the 90s, it was so uncommon for that kind of understanding. It was racism was still prevalent. Even till this day in 2025, racism is still prevalent. 20, 30 years ago, we're talking over 30 years ago, Yeah, racism was a factor. So I give Ron Dennis full credit for looking at Lewis as Lewis is, for who Lewis is. Because without Ron Dennis, I don't think he would have been signed to McLaren. If someone else was in charge of McLaren, they might not have even have cared about Lewis. They might not be able to look past his skin color. Ron Dennis had the intelligence to look past that, or perhaps it just didn't even matter to him. You see where I'm going with this? But hey, the man is a superstar promoting this sport worldwide. It's not talked about enough, but if Max Verstappen was doing that, my goodness. Like I said, they would kiss his ass from here to Holland. But the statement went on to say, "What I do know is he'll have his work cut out to beat his teammate Charles Leclerc, who speaks Italian, knows the team, doesn't spend quite so much time posing for pictures, and thanks to a single lap shootout, it's regarded by many to be the fastest driver of them all." Apparently, I've always said Charles is fast on a single lap, but his poles to win conversion is absolutely terrible, which means that he mostly set up the car for the qualifying instead of the race. So in actuality, we really don't know how fast Leclerc is under one lap. We really don't know. I still believe at the best, Lewis is still the fastest guy under one lap. Now, how can I say that after the season he had against George Russell in 2024? It's really simple. That car was tuned to George Russell. It worked better for George Russell. It wasn't working for Lewis. Mercedes knew that. They weren't willing to fix it because Lewis is leaving. Why invest in a driver if he's not staying? I get it, it's business. But we saw when Mercedes did invest in Lewis with the car in the direction he required, he would perform extremely well. Lewis is not the kind of driver who focused too much on one lap pace anymore. He would much rather focus more on the race pace. He'd rather qualify a decent third, a second, doesn't have to get pole to win the championship. That's what he's learned over these years. And a lot of people who've never won one championship is questioning why Lewis doesn't care so much about, just being the fastest on one lap. Because you can see on race, he's the fastest across 50, 60 laps. So would you rather be faster on one lap or faster on 50 to 60 lap? That's what Lewis prioritized. And at the phase in his career that he is, cars are being difficult. The Mercedes were difficult. The Ferrari is being a little bit difficult so far. Not in terms of handling, but in terms of getting it into the operating window. You look at those circumstances, almost all drivers would struggle somewhat. Even Charles got out qualified by Leclerc in the sprint and in the Chinese qualifying on Saturday. So, what do you have to say about that? But this article, it does go on to say, and you hear the sarcasm in this article, it's literally says, and this is Jeremy Clarkson words, apparently Charles Leclerc doesn't spend as much time posing for pictures. So you're saying Lewis has spent a lot of time posing for pictures, yet he's still managed to win 7 world titles. Why do these old idiots have such a problem with how Lewis does things in his own life and in his career? It's clearly worked. He's had 7 world titles legally. He would have had an 8 if they didn't steal it in front of the world audience. And yet they question this man. Oh, he takes too much pictures. Honestly, I think a lot of it is vindictiveness, jealousy, condescension, racism, classism. They've always been against this man. And the more he bees himself is the more they realize they can't control him. And they hate it when a black man is standing tall and proud and they can't control him. And he doesn't act white. He acts like a black man. He doesn't go out there talking like he's Tiger Woods. Oh, I'm not black. No. Lewis has said, I'm black. They hate me because I'm black. Lewis wears his blackness proudly. And I think they hate him even more. People like Jeremy Clarkson. What was he fired for? Again, wasn't it racism? Multiple times? Oh, yeah. But he goes on to say, and maybe he signed for Ferrari for a different reason. He knows he's past his prime now and he didn't want to retire, having never driven for motorsport's crown jewel. Either way, I wish him well. Well, Jeremy, you got a funny way of wishing someone well. Clarkson have always been a big hater. He's always been a big hater for a while now. This guy has always been a big hater for a while now. And I'm telling you, they think that as black people, we're supposed to stay in our lane and confined to the invisible rules and invisible lines they set for us. Whenever you see a black person steps out of the expected role that they assign for black people, that's when they come at us, start hating on us, start spewing all these lies and hypocritical statements. Really, they have funny ways of showing their displeasure in you not confining yourself to being the quiet black person who doesn't know he's black. Lewis is the complete opposite. He's proud he's black. He's bold with it. He's got swag. He's got style. He's got everything to piss them off. And they don't like that because they think, how dare you, a black person, step out of your place, step out of line. You're supposed to act the way we want you to act, the way white people want you to act. That's the mentality right there. And it's honestly a bit of a racist mentality that a lot of people set for black people, thinking you're black, this is what you're supposed to be, this is how you're supposed to be, stick to it, stick to the script. You notice where Lewis get criticized for certain things, other drivers, they don't face that kind of criticism. Different rules based on your skin tone. I'm telling you, if Lewis was white, white and British, oh my Jesus Christ, they'd be kissing his ass all the way around the Great British Empire. You know how long that should stretch. I'm just saying it loud and clear. And as a black person, if you are black, you know this more than anyone else. Working in an environment that is predominantly white, there is rules that is set out for us. And whenever we do things that they don't agree with, they say, we didn't know you do that. It's like when they question, why do all the black people sit and speak to each other and have dinner together and have lunch together? And it's like, well, don't the white people at work do the same thing? Yeah, a lot of black people, we get asked those questions, as stupid as it sounds. That's because in their mind they've set rules for us to follow, and they find it bizarre when we somehow don't follow those racist rules that confines us to be in a certain way. What if we just want to be us? And this is what they hate about Lewis, is that he just wanted to be himself. And that's not going to change, because the man, given what he's accomplished, the fact that they still question him says it all. It's a racist mindset. What else would it be? What else would it be? What has Lewis done so terribly to make these people despise him so much? What has he done? What has he done? The guy's a fucking angel. What has he done that is so terrible? The guy has a squeaky clean portfolio. Like, seriously, what has he done to deserve this level of criticism that is not warranted? And most of the things that people are going to point out that Lewis has done are mostly boiled down to just human mistakes. Things that me and you make on a daily basis, but the world doesn't get to see our mistakes. But when they get to see a black man tiny mistakes that he does, ooh, they criticize him forever. Yeah, we're going to end the video here. Thank you all for watching. Subscribe, and I will see you in our next video. Peace.